I come from the world of making furniture and objects and these sort of things, and I always found it kind of unfulfilling. You'd get, parties thrown for you. You'd be on the cover of a magazine for making like a sofa, and I always found that kind of disappointing. That all the mentality of designers, all the capability of designers, and like that's what's being celebrated. Meanwhile, over the years, I got to meet many scientists, including other folks from NASA and beyond, and I saw the things they were working on, and I thought, wow, okay, now that's cover of magazine stuff, right? Not a sofa. But no one really shines a light on it.
Welcome to Secret Ops, the podcast uncovering the world of operations, one episode at a time. I'm your host, Ariana Cafone, and today's guest is Todd Bracher, industrial designer and founder of Betterlab. Betterlab is at the forefront of leveraging science-based design to address global challenges, a fascinating mission that we talk about on today's episode. Now, Todd also has developed over 200 products and holds over 24 patents. He's also won International Designer of the Year twice, so I count my lucky stars that I was able to talk to him. Whether you realize it or not, industrial design is around us everywhere, and Todd really breaks down how his view of the world changes how we interact with it. A topic that is around us in every part of our lives, but we very, very rarely speak about it, and that is industrial design. Let's start with breaking that down. What does that mean for us non-designers? What is industrial design?
Well, first off, thank you. It's great to be here, and I'm thrilled to be able to break down a little bit of at least how I see industrial design. I guess the most fundamental version of it in my mind. I help really give shape to the physical world, and anything we touch, anything we engage with, uh, minus the architecture, in some cases, yes, but minus the architecture is industrial design. And I guess the difference between, well, what's art and industrial design or sculpture in a way, industrial designers are concerned with scale and manufacturing and repeatability. And so we're designing for industry, essentially, thus industrial design.
Industrial design, did it come to you or did you go to it? Meaning, did it sort of just pop into your lap one day and say, hey, I just view the world through how we can make objects better? Or was it something intentional?
It's an interesting question. So I think most designers, period, graphic design, even architecture and web design, fashion design, I think we tend to all come from a similar source, and the source is wanting to solve problems, and that problem could be very subjective. That said, how I landed in it was I've always had a real deep interest in science. So when I was applying to design school, ironically, I thought I was going to be an illustrator or someone who can draw. But I discovered as I applied to the school that they requested that you had to quote unquote design this object and draw it. And I said, that's interesting because it was really a combination of sort of physics and science with this sort of art world, illustration world. And that's what really brought me into it. Yeah, I never knew about it. And this was in the late 1990s. And I think today, you have brands like Apple and other brands that have made design so visible. Back in the late 90s, it was really still unknown. At the time, there was a handful of schools that even practiced industrial design.
Do you find, so I told you I'm married to a designer and we talk about design because that's how he views the world. It's like we give him a gift and he looks at the packaging more than what the gift is.
Yeah,
How is
sounds
this
about
built?
right.
How is this?
Yep.
And I do think we take good design for granted. When something has good design, it's so seamless and it just feels so effortless that we don't even really think about it. Versus if you think about a packaging, trying to open it and you can't open it, that friction kind of gets under your skin. Is that how you begin based on the amount of friction that you're getting in creating an object or working with something in the world?
I think it's a good question. I think it's a combination of things, but ultimately for me, I see myself as the translator between the you and me, the human on the end of the result, and the business on the front end of it. So the business has certain goals, certain outcomes they're targeting. And if I can steer those goals into being really meaningful solution to the end user, the customer, the consumer, then I think we've got it right. So we got to really solve a need for both parties. And all too often, when we say bad design, I think it's the business is, let's say, ticking their boxes, but they're not ticking the boxes of the consumer. And I think that's where the gap lies. So to your point of like poor packaging or other things that don't work real well, those I think are great examples of that misunderstanding of their audience.
Mm. Let's break down how you work in businesses. So let's say you were brought into a business. At what point and what is their need that they're looking to solve? And how do you work with the team?
Mhm. I think the key point to your question or the key moment is at what point. And design is often inserted at the very end. So there's a business case, there's, 10 people in a room that have came up with this great idea, and then they start even engineering or start some level of realization of the thing. And then it gets eventually downstream to the quote designer. And the designer now kind of knows what it's going to look like already. It's been handed to them. And they're there to make it look as good as they can before it goes into the box. And I think that's really a failure for businesses not understanding how design could really truly transform or unlock the business's goals. So how I'd like to work with businesses is really in the front end and really at the very inception. And when it's still a loose, undefined idea, but they're really clear about the business objectives, as I mentioned earlier. So what we do is usher and kind of guide all these decisions because there's millions of decisions that happen, literally millions of decisions, some small, some big, from that very beginning of the process all the way to the delivery. And you need that advocate for the customer at the end of the day and the advocate for the business. So that to me is really the sweet spot when you integrate designers in that full spectrum of work.
Do you find that people bring you on at the right time, or are you coming on and trying to catch up? Do you
Both.
find that people both? It's both.
Yeah, both. I mean, it's not like design. I think it'll change when design is part of like the MBA program or something. And I think because it's not seen as of having real value, and then everyone says, "Wow, but Apple's done so well," and you're like, "Well, design was a big part of big part of it, by the way." And most brands today, I think, if you're not really leveraging design well, I think you'll be left behind. And I think that's becoming more and more clear.
Let's say it became a part of an MBA program, product design, industrial design. What would be some of the fundamental points that people should learn?
So there's a lot there, actually. It's a very big question. Designers, in my opinion, need to represent themselves as experts, not vendors. It's a very different thing. Hey, designer, just make this thing look beautiful as a vendor. There's, $50 an hour. Thanks. That exists, and that's fine if that's what you need. I get it. But true transformation, you need to leverage experts, and not all designers are experts. Just as a lot of experts aren't expert too. We all know this. And but we want to get to a place where you go to the doctor's office, and I don't think you say to the doctor, "Hey, my side's hurting, so I need this prescription. I need this remedy for my symptoms." Like, and you don't tell the doctor, and then they just execute it. As a vendor, you go there, you explain your symptoms and you wait for a remedy, and they'll prescribe a remedy, and we accept it because we see these folks as experts. So I think that's, in my opinion, in the MBA world, uh, there you're training. There's financial experts, there's legal experts. That's the sort of core effort of this team is quite clear. But the design, somehow that's a vendor, and that's a mistake. I'd love to see designers added to that foundational core org chart, and because a designer isn't always an industrial designer, it could be a systems designer, uh, organizational designer. I mean, there's a lot of ways to look at how to leverage the mind of a designer to really create efficiencies and eventually a more successful business.
Yeah, oh man, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole because I have so many thoughts. But I do want to talk about how you're fusing this expertise that you have with people that have complementary expertises in your Better Lab. So can you talk about the mission of what you're doing there and how you all are working collaboratively?
Yeah, that's this is like my favorite thing ever is so Betterlab has been in my head for forever. I guess since I was a kid, but we officially kicked it off maybe 3 or 4 years ago or so. I come from the world of making furniture and objects and these sort of things, and I always found it kind of unfulfilling. Like you'd get parties thrown for you. You'd be on a cover of a magazine for making like a sofa, and I always found that kind of disappointing. That all the mentality of designers, all the capability of designers, and like that's what's being celebrated. Meanwhile, over the years, I've done a lot of various consulting roles, and one of them was with 3M, so the big American multinational. I got to meet many scientists there and create a lot of friendships with those folks, including other folks from NASA and beyond. And I saw the things they were working on, and I thought, wow, okay, that's cover of magazine stuff, right? Not a sofa. But no one really shines a light on it. And I mean, of course they do, but not really, and not in the way I'd like to see it. So Betterlab came from this idea of co-collaborating with scientists, innovators, technologists, and to help really bring these ideas out of the lab and really into the world, into our lives. And I have this hypothesis that most of the world's problems have been solved. However, they're in patent form, they're in a drawer, they're tied up in legal litigation. There's a million reasons why they're not in the world. And sometimes, worse yet, they're in the world, but they're poorly performing because, let's say, a better designed product is winning. But maybe it doesn't work as well, but it's winning because it's designed better. So Better Lab's mission is really to help rectify that. We work with scientists to really solve problems at scale. But I'm well aware as a designer, I only have so much capability. I think I'm a conduit to these thinkers and innovators, and I can help get it to be successful in the world. But I couldn't do this alone, and I think that's something that I'm happy to acknowledge.
My guess, based on my own experience working with technologists and scientists, is that the communication and the learning to translate each other is probably the most important piece, because you're coming from these specializations and some people naturally have that ability and some people also need to hone that skill. Because you all are coming from your own niches, do you have a framework of working together to help sort of give you a sandbox to really play in as a team of different experts?
So yes and no. It's not. It's ad hoc actually, and so it is a sandbox, but it's unique every time. And the good news is I have a crazy obsession with physics in the first place, and we'll call it science in the first place. So, um, I guess I'm an unrealized scientist, so I very quickly can at least hang in there with some of the conversations. So I think it facilitates trust. I know my boundaries, that's for sure, and I think a lot of the folks that I work with appreciate design, and they're happy to see that their ideas can actually become manifested and put into the world. So I think we find the sort of mutual ground to therefore sandbox our ideas, to use that word, in a way that works. And I have to say, I mean, I can go through examples too, but as a designer too, we push in ways that, hey, did you consider this or have you thought of that? And the scientist says, no, but this is how we solve it. And oh, okay. So like there's that co-creation is an important aspect of it.
I don't know if you're able to share some of the projects that you're working on with
Sure.
Better Lab, but I am terribly curious. What are some things that you all are biting
Yeah.
off and chewing?
So we have a couple of things in the works right now. Wound care, we have myopia or eye health. We're addressing, I mean, we're talking at like the super big scale. And one of the biggest ones I'm really excited by is uh, germicidal light. And just a really quick story. So I know a former NASA scientist for a long time. He had asked me to help support a business of his where he had reverse engineered and has the foundational patent around delivering germicidal light, in which they have in the International Space Station, into our world here. So as COVID is kind of running rampant, we could put light into architecture that'll actually clean the environment while you're in it, which is very, very unique. And I get inserted as the design operator. And so I work directly with that CEO to really help grow this business. And early on, I saw this is going to be difficult. There's a vaccine in the pipeline. We're asking architecture to replace light everywhere. Now we're talking large architecture. There's the inverse square law in terms of light, sort of diminishing its potency as modern architecture is quite large. So anyway, the list went on. So as the designer, in parallel, I take at the time, my two little kids, a 5 and a 6-year-old, to the store. And if you all remember, we would be using hand sanitizer, the liquid sanitizer, every 5 minutes to stay alive, And
Yeah.
I didn't like the idea of putting these chemicals on my little kids' hands. So I called around and I found a friend of mine. She runs one of the large banks here in the US. And I said, "Do you guys use hand sanitizer?" She says, "Oh, yeah, it's costs us about $30,000 per location." Oh, okay. And the maintenance of it, the transport of it. I started to kind of run mental math on this thing, and that's not sustainable for a small business. So decided, again, as the designer here, take the light from the ceiling and put it into a hand device. It doesn't take real genius to figure this out, but we hadn't thought of that before. So we have created what we call Light Wash, and it's a hand sanitizer. And we're actually in the tail end now of bringing it to the world. And what it's done is, number one is it's much more effective for sterilizing your hands. The gel sanitizers do not get in the nooks and crannies of your hands. Number two, gel sanitizers take about a minute and a half, 90 seconds to be somewhat effective. This takes just like 5 to 6 seconds and it's clean. And number three, is that right? Which is super, super big deal. If you pull up the reports now, you'll see that liquid sanitizers are responsible for 2% of the global carbon footprint. Consider the amount of water waste, plastic bottles, transportation. It's unbelievable. Not to mention their fire hazards, cause eczema. They have to be maintained constantly. You have to be replacing them all the time. This device replaces all of that. So from a sustainability perspective, it's hugely beneficial. So long story short, this is an outcome of putting a designer with the technology and a business willing to see how we can, really respond to the market in I think, a really smart way. So that's just one example of how Betterlab is really helping co-create and take these technologies and really put it where it's going to make a difference.
I am so jazzed hearing that from so many different levels. Because you're also talking about, as an operator, the compound effect of something that seems small, that when you actually put it all together in the larger picture, the reason that you should change it, that that argument is 10 times bigger than it would initially come across. Oftentimes when I'm working in businesses, they'll say, don't worry about that's a small problem, it's a small problem. But then you have death by a thousand cuts. You have all these little things that then
Exactly.
build up to something that's either a cost issue, a operational issue, a people issue, usually all of those things at one
Yep.
time. So,
Yep.
so you working with the operator in the business, how does that relationship evolve over time? Because part of it must be ideating, part of it must be identifying problems, rolling out
Mm-hmm.
different prototype solutions. Are
Mm-hmm.
these, I can imagine they're long-term relationships because of the different type of solutioning that you're doing. Can you just give us that picture a little bit more of what that looks like?
Yeah. Yeah. So it can be in a variety of ways, but I think the underbelly of your question is I guess, how does this all make sense? In my opinion, how does it all make sense
Yes.
to this leadership team, right? And I have an approach that I call context-based design. And in fact, I've launched a book in this past June, called Design in Context. And it's literally the playbook for how I do this. So folks can help themselves and learn a bit about that approach. And what this means is, if I take you, the way I sort of, the analogy I use is, if I take you to the park and I bring you in front of a tree, and I don't think, I could be wrong, but I don't think you would critique the tree and say, I'd say, "What do you think of this tree?" And you would say, it's got too many leaves. That tree has got, the green isn't quite right, or it's too wide, or I don't like the shape of the leaf. I don't think you're going to critique it in a negative way. I think you see the tree and you say, you know what? It is what it is. It's a result of an ecosystem. It's dependent upon the rainfall, sunlight, location, climate, you name it, invasive species, etc. That shapes the tree. And you're aware of that because you're in the same context yourself. That's where we come from as humans. Whereas if I bring you a new car, here's the latest Tesla, however, I think you could fairly say, well, I don't like the shape of the fender, or I don't like blue, or whatever. And I would say that's fair, because the car is an opinion, whereas the tree is a objective result of the ecosystem. It's got nothing to do with you or me. Design in context, how it's intending to work, is it looks at all the governors that affect the result. And what we're trying to do is, we actually design the system that identifies the solution and then therefore drives the solution. So the solution's almost inevitable. So the operator itself will understand it. Why is it this shape? Why is it this color? Why is it this size? Why is it this cost? Why does it do this? all that's answered because if you look at all the governors that we all have worked, it's very cross-functional. We're all weighing in, all the stakeholders are involved, and we're all designing the solution by gathering this information. So it's not Todd's opinion. It's never my opinion. It's always really truthfully governed by the ecosystem.
Love that. Because for me as an individual, I am motivated by the why behind why we should be doing something. Not just do this thing, but why should I be doing this thing? And I actually think most people are driven by that. So
Hmm.
oftentimes when I'm explaining why we're doing something operationally, I'm giving them context that doesn't seem applicable, but actually is. So in their
Yes,
head, they can see how all of the dominoes stack up. So when you tip one over, they perfectly
you
fall.
got it.
Design for me, I think, has felt very opaque because again, you're seeing this beautiful outcome, but you don't understand the reasoning why. Why should we do it this way? Or why does this feel better than this? And that context is, I would say, like a democratization of that information to
100%.
help people who don't have the same knowledge and expertise that you have. Have you found the in context portion being delivered in a certain way versus another more effective? Meaning, like, I'm a visual learner. So, is a visual reasoning, as a bulleted list, is there some tips
Yeah.
on delivering that context that you have found people click with the best?
It's the object. It's the design, and it could be again a systems, even a system. It doesn't have to be a physical manifestation. It's almost like a sketch that gets more and more defined as we go forward. By the way, I don't know everything, right? So I need to have all these other departments and experts weigh in to help shape it, and that's really, and then therefore I can respond to what it is their needs are, and as the stakeholders, it's a democratization of the governors that are going to shape this result.
Gosh, I hate that we're almost at time. I want more time with you, Todd. Do you mind holding up your book because the cover, it feels like your website does, and there's something hypnotic about your website.
This is
Yeah,
it. Yeah.
it's so delicious. Can you talk about where that came from? Just because
Yeah.
I think that there's something about book covers, it's like a magnet, and I feel that way about your aesthetic. So can you talk about that process?
Well, thank you. I work with a designer in Sweden, Henrik Nygren, and Henrik and I, we love the idea of stripping away layers of nonsense or jargon, or yeah, maybe jargon's the right language, and therefore the table of contents is like right on the cover. And like, why put it inside the book? We don't need a fancy title. You want to know what's in it, so there it is. And the website's the same way. Everything you want to know, it's like literally said, this is what it is. And that's kind of unusual for some reason in our world. And people tend to want to have a lot to say, that really buries the lead. So whereas again, it's almost scientific in a way, and how we communicate. This is very straightforward, and trying to avoid any jargon. You know,
If people are thinking, I'm hearing Todd's book, I think I should read this. Where do you think that people should sort of jump in? Can you read it just like front to back? Can you pick and
yeah,
choose? How does that work?
yeah, it's a great question, and I didn't want to have 10,000 pages of fluff. So there's actually maybe 45-minute read of the essay portion. So that's the meat and potatoes. It's really clear, and it's structured in a way where you again design as expertise, meeting the need, alignment, context, outcomes. Like, it's very, very clear. And that takes about 45 minutes to read. And then I have a whole portion of dialogue. So it's me in conversation with various folks. Could be actually my former NASA scientist. We have one of the world's leading graphic designers. We have a business operator, entrepreneur, finance person. Like, and so you can get, it sort of brings to life some of these practices. But I think it get kind of boring to just hear me rambling for a million pages, when especially I could summarize it in a 45-minute essay.
Okay, Todd, I have one last question because it's just pure curiosity, Ariana, little kid curiosity, which is, so in the last year I became a parent, so I have an 8-month-old right
Ah,
now. And
congratulations.
thank you. I am curious how having a children has changed your aperture of industrial design and design.
Mm,
I mean, we talked about the example that you talked about. I find that my whole view is changing of how things
hmm.
work, and I'm mad when a bottle is, like everything is under critical negotiation, because it has to
Yes.
function well, because you
Yes.
have 2 seconds to make it work. How has that sort of changed, or I don't know, deepened what you do?
There's two answers I have. One is I remember the early days of parenthood, and you are bombarded with, let's say, a dozen new types of products, from the stroller to the bottle warmer to the whatever you want to call it, and you have to figure them all out at once, which is overwhelming. From the car seats to this, like, it's just too much at one time while you're managing the children and your life and your work. And that I remember and thinking like, wow, these things need to be better designed so that it's just they're much more intuitive, because I don't have time to read every manual and then remember it. But the other, and I think more meaningful response to your question is, you know, at what point, what type of legacy and what sort of model do you want to leave? And how do you want to exemplify uh, participating in the world? So that's where Betterlab really kind of kicked into overdrive. Was I don't want to show my children that their dad made some great sofas. I think to show them, even at that time and now their young age, that even at their age now they can make a difference in our world, and a positive influence in our world. And it's not something you wait for when you're 50. It's something you could do today, all of us. So that's really, having children has really helped me see that.
That's a beautiful way to end this. I do want to ask you some rapid fire questions more about you as a
Hmm.
human. So I'm going to just shoot them at you. First thing that comes to your brain, and we'll learn more about you as a human being. Okay, first question is, what is your favorite part of the day?
Oh, like super early in the morning, like no kidding, 4:30, 5:30, like this. And that's the time I'm left alone, and it's fantastic.
What is the best purchase you've made under $50?
This sounds really silly. A laptop case, like a sleeve, which I don't really know why I have one, but I do, and I love it. It's got smiley faces all over it, and for some reason, it just makes me happy. And I know I practice with my kids. When I see they're kind of grumpy, I sort of hold up that thing, and then they start smiling. And I know it really does affect me in a positive way. It's bright yellow, like it's fantastic. I'm very happy to have
I gotta tell you, that's how I feel about this turtleneck. I feel like I'm wearing Crayolas, and
it.
I totally get
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Yeah, it really does work.
It
What do you
does,
know?
really does.
You know.
What is a quote that has stuck with you throughout the years?
I'm going to butcher it, but there's Charlie Duke. He was an Apollo astronaut, and he says something to the effect of he went to the moon, right? And he comes back and he says to his dad, at the time was an old man, right? And he says, "Hey, Dad, would you believe I just went to the moon?" And his dad's like, "I cannot understand this. I cannot believe that you went to the moon. Like, it's unbelievable." And then he turns to his 5-year-old son and he says, "What do you think? Isn't it amazing? I just went to the moon." And the kid's like, "Yeah, no big deal." And I think that says a lot about, like, what happens in our life. Like, we start to, as a kid, everything's possible. Anything's possible. And as we get older, it's like, oh, I don't know about that. A lot of skepticism. So, and I love that this quote really like shines a light on that very clearly.
What is something that makes you little kid happy outside of your laptop smiley face case?
Drawing with my kids, and we sit and do a lot of drawing together, and we play this sort of game where we draw, and then I draw a character, and then the other person has to trap the character, but there's always a way to escape. So it's like this endless kind of game, and we have so much fun just sort of playing this ridiculous drawing game. And it's not about drawing well; it's just about communicating through drawing, and I think that's really really enjoyable.
So fun. Last question is, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Wow. Um, I mean, real simple, someone that's made a meaningful difference. Yeah, not easy to do, but simple in intention. Yeah.
Beautiful. Todd, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your knowledge and your generosity with us. If people are listening and they want to find you, where should we point them?
Of course, the good old websites is not a bad place to look, toddbracher.com.
Fantastic. Again, thank you so much for your time, Secret Ops listeners. Thank you so much for listening or watching. Remember, share Secret Ops and find us on YouTube if you haven't checked us out yet. And we will see you next time. Bye.